You are listening to the Eating Disorders Recovery Podcast with me, Tabitha Farrar. Hello there, welcome to this week's podcast. This podcast is about, it's about me talking about how eating disorders can change our values and turn us into people that we aren't really, and how recovery can amend those sorts of things. I had a dream last night, and don't worry, I'm not going to be one of those boring people that just starts telling you about random dreams I've had. This one actually is relevant. It was about a friend of mine. She was quite a bit older than me. A friend of mine who died quite some time ago. Yeah, a pretty long time ago now. And I often dream of people that I don't really necessarily see anymore. Luckily not usually because they've died, but it could be for other reasons. And generally when I dream of someone, I always wake up and I just think, well, that was kind of nice to see them. It almost feels a bit like you got to spend some time with them, in albeit in a dream. And this particular friend of mine, let's call her Mary. Mary was she was Mary, and it felt really good to see her. But whenever I think of Mary, it's difficult for me to think about her, to remember her, and I wish I could just remember her for the wonderful person that she was, and we spent a lot of time together, the fun times we had. But really, when I think of Mary, most of the time I just get this feeling of real guilt and wrongdoing, and quite rightly, actually, I think, because I didn't do right by her. So Mary got diagnosed with cancer and got diagnosed, by the time she was diagnosed, it was stage 4 breast cancer. And so there wasn't really much that could be done, and she had about a year. And of course I talked to her on the phone a lot. You know, we lived in the same town, so it's not like she was very far away. But me being so busy all the time, this was when I was sick, by the way. So me being so busy all the time in the gym, most of it, and exercising and doing anorexic me, I've always had this intention I'll go and spend more time with her, especially as over the months went by and she got sicker. And I didn't. It was just always the intention of, I'll make time. And then with everything with me, anything that upset my daily routine was a problem. And I was really stuck in it that time. I was really stuck in the exercise. And so taking time out to see her, and then it was getting towards the end, and her family put on this party for her, a celebration of life party. And I remember when it was 5:30 on a Wednesday evening that this celebration of life party was. And it was being held 5 miles from my house. It was really close by, so I can't make distance as any excuse. And but the time of that celebration of life party was the same time that spin class that I like to take at the gym was on, an exercise class, one that I went to religiously every week. And so then I had this dilemma, didn't I? What do you do? Now, that wouldn't be a dilemma for anybody else, I don't think, or at least anybody without an eating disorder, I guess. And now in my head, it just seems like, how could that have even been a dilemma? How could have I even contemplated not going to Mary's celebration of life party when she was terminally ill, and instead going to a spin class at the local gym, a room full of people that I didn't really know, on an electronic bike, just because I needed to exercise. But like I said, I was pretty in my eating disorder then, and I chose the gym. I chose to go to the gym. I didn't go to Mary's end of life party. And I just made the excuses in my head, like, well, it's not going to be a big deal. There'll probably be lots of people there. She won't even notice that I'm not there. And I justified it. And I also told myself, I'll make it up to her. I'll go at the weekend and I'll go and see her. That's I think what I mostly used. I told I'll go and see her at the weekend and it'll be fine. And so I didn't go. And the crazy thing is that I didn't even feel bad for not going. It just felt going to the gym seemed the right thing to do. Because of course, when you have a restrictive eating disorder with a compulsive movement component, the movement's always the right thing to do, isn't it? And it does come above everything else. And it's more important than anything else. And I do believe that my eating disorder meddled with my belief system. So I really did believe, actually, that was the right thing to do, as crazy as that sounds to anybody who hasn't had a compulsive movement problem with an eating disorder. But those of you listening that have, I know that you'll understand. So anyway, I didn't go, and Mary died 2 days later. She died on the Friday. And what can I say? I didn't go. And I know that when she died, I was very upset. I definitely I couldn't believe it, really. It actually was a bit of a reality smack in the face for me. That, like my brain could justify anything and take people for granted and always put the movement first. And Mary wasn't the first person I'd taken for granted. I was doing it to everybody all the time. But that was really the first time there had been that big a consequence. I didn't get to see her before she died. That was huge. And so I was really upset when I heard that news. And I cried a lot, but I actually think a lot of that was my own grief at oh my God, I didn't go. And I just felt guilty. And I think that the more I recovered, the more things like that have come back and just made me think, wow. And I feel like I have way more regret now about not going to that end of life party than I even did, say, on that Friday when I heard that she died, because to me now, the exercise is just, it's less than unimportant in my life. It's so unimportant compared to people. As it should be, it's movement's in its place, I guess. I always put people first, and so the fact that I know that I made that decision, that I made the decision not to go to Mary's end of life party because I wanted to go to my spin class at the gym, it's like my own brain can barely comprehend it, because my brain is now in a different state than it was when it was in the state that made that decision. So I know I made that decision, and I can understand myself making that decision. I can feel myself making that decision. I can feel what it was like to make that decision. I can feel the way that my brain justified it. All of those things are there, but I still can't believe that I made that decision. And I still regret that I made that decision, because a lot of the stupid decisions that I made when I had a restrictive eating disorder, I've been able to kind of make up for them, I guess, because people have still been around. So I've been able to apologize, for not going to people's weddings. I've been able to make it up to them in a different way. Most of them actually didn't really need me to make it up to them at all. They just needed me to recover, and that was it. That was enough. But this one, I can't change it. And that's really difficult. It's really difficult for someone like me, especially. I just want to be able to make everything right. I want to be able to, I guess, sort things out. And this is something that I can't sort out. So, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Eating disorders, they really meddle with you. I know that it turned me into somebody I certainly wouldn't like. Somebody I don't really like. When I look back on it, I don't think I would have been my friend. I think it would have been possible to be my friend, frankly. Mary tried. But very, very, just everything looked different, and my attitude to everything was different, and every situation really was different, just the way almost my brain processed things. And I do feel that over the years of having a restrictive eating disorder, it really affected my belief systems, and I really did believe that movement, exercise, and orthorexic eating were things that I had to do, and that they were things that were valuable and morally right, and more valuable than anything else. And so I could justify making very selfish decisions that would allow me to continue with my compulsions. Like, my brain really believed that they were right. And I also felt through recovery and through the rewiring process in recovery, I felt that my belief systems begin to let go of that, and that belief system begin to change and go away. Belief systems really fascinate me, actually. I'm an atheist, but I'm fascinated by religion. I'm fascinated from the belief standpoint. And my grandmother is an example. I do actually think that belief systems, I think that they can be biologically influenced. I do actually. And so I think that with anorexia, I think that my belief systems were kind of influenced by that biological change when my eating disorder genetics were set up. And of course, then my behaviours, when our behaviours inform our brains are always watching and listening, and our thoughts that we listen to inform our brain as to what's important, and our behaviours inform our brain as to what's important. And so, of course, behaving as if exercise and restrictive eating were important for so many years taught my brain and taught that belief system in there. And then as I began to nutritionally rehabilitate, though, that belief system seemed to get easier to shake, which is the biological bit that really interests me. That maybe when my brain believed that there wasn't enough food in the environment and that I had to move, it somehow affected my belief systems. So that would be true. I don't know, but this is why it fascinates me, because I don't know the answers here. I just think it's very interesting. And I mentioned my grandmother, somebody who was incredibly religious. All through my childhood, the only thing she'd often just ask me, if you phoned her up, she'd say, "Have you said your prayers? Have you been praying?" It used to drive me crazy. And so a very religious person. And then she had a stroke, and she recovered. And then when she recovered, that was just gone. It was just bizarre. And so so belief systems are really interesting, that something that illness can affect them. And not just illness, health can affect them as well. But anyway, that's a huge digression, but it's kind of relevant because it's important, if you're in recovery from a restrictive eating disorder, to understand that the way that your brain works and the way that your disordered activities feel so incredibly important, the things that you just don't want to let go of. You just feel that you don't want to let go of it. That actually changes as you recover a lot of the time, especially if you're doing the rewiring stuff at the same time, to the point where it's like you're not letting go of it because you have to, you're letting go of it because it's not valuable to you anymore, it doesn't matter anymore. And that's sort of a wonderful place to get to, and that's a place that really leads into the freedom then of being able to make choices. I felt like with Mary's end of life party, I don't know if I really had the freedom to make choices at that time. It didn't feel like it at the time. It felt like I was making a choice. It felt like I was choosing to exercise, so I guess I was, but it didn't feel like I really understood that I could choose differently. And recovery for me was deciding that I would choose differently, even when it felt like I couldn't, or even when it felt like I shouldn't. So I was starting to choose differently, to eat more food, to choose differently, to actually commit to weight gain, to choose differently, to commit to stopping the compulsive movement. And those were difficult choices for me to make. It's not saying that they were easy, but the harder part was actually getting to the point of understanding that I actually did have a choice, that I really did have a choice. And for me, understanding also that when I knew that, oh, I do have a choice, it then became my responsibility to make the right choice. Whereas before, when I was a bit like, I've got no choice, I've just got to exercise, it was almost like absolving myself of responsibility, which I think is one of the most dangerous things when you're an adult with a long-term restrictive eating disorder, is you've got to understand that it's your responsibility to make recovery choices, even when they feel difficult, and even when you feel like it's not a choice that you can make, it's always a choice that you can make. And I wish I'd been a little bit further along in my recovery when, at the time, Mary died, because I think a little bit further on I would have been able to make the right choice. At least the choice that feels right to my brain in the state that it is now, not the choice that felt right to my brain in the state that it was when I had anorexia. So a lot of the time when you've had a restrictive eating disorder for a very long time, you forget what it was like, or at least I'd speak for myself, I forgot what it was like to think differently and to be the person that I used to be and the person that I am again now, whose values were different, who certainly valued friends and family and people over anything else and put them first always. And it still makes me very sad for how long that changed and how many people I hurt, and it makes me sad the amount of regret that I have and things that I can't change now about that time, that I can't make better. But at least I did change it. At least now, you know, I came back to that person who is actually kind of a nice person and values people as they should be valued. But with that comes that huge amount of regret for actions of the past when I wasn't in that state, which feels a bit unfair, doesn't it? You know, that I'm judging myself based on who I am now. I'm judging who I was when I had my eating disorder. So maybe it is a little bit unfair, but it doesn't, you know, it also feels quite healthy that I do that. It really does. So, yeah, I don't really know what this podcast was about, but maybe it will be helpful for some of you. Until next time, cheerio.